Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker, it's good to see you. Listen,
you're a Bitcoin maximalist. You're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central bank digital currency.
Hey, I don't have all the answers, but together, I know we can find them.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. Landy's in the wings, it looks like. I never know if Landy's going to make it. He's very, Landy's very sort of secretive. Like, you never know with him. Like, he doesn't necessarily tell you, but he shows up if he says he'll show up. So He's there, and I'm going to add him in about 30 seconds. He's telling me he always shows up. He's like, yeah, he's like he's like the Iranians. They always show up for what they say. I'm just kidding. Landy is nothing like the Iranians. We're going to talk Iran today, Landy and I. This might be our last real conversation about it because I think we've come closer to an agreement, but we'll see. It's like Trump saying we're really close to an agreement. I think Landy and I might be close to an agreement on this. But again, till he gets back to me in a minute when I let him in the feed, I won't know for sure. I do know that I am I am in the camp of not happy campers about what's happened. And I've got questions, I've got concerns, and I'm learning that I'm a hardliner. I'm a super hardliner. On other news, we're moving on. Iran's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to take the back seat for a while, and this has been good news for Bitcoin, good news for the oil markets, and we got a lot ahead. There's again, I think most Americans didn't want to focus too much on Iran anyway, so. I'm not gonna give my whole case before Landy's on. I like him to be able to be here to join me in it. Hey, Landy, how are you?
Good, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. welcome, you and the monkey, the Bitcoin monkey.
Yep. I'm the Bitcoin monkey is enjoying everything about the markets right now. So
I
I'm having
know
fun.
this is the one good news.
Yeah. Well, I mean, markets have been pretty damn good for quite some time. So can't complain about that outside of the Bitcoin market being in a bear market still. But I will cherish the pumpy days when we get them.
But but Bitcoin went over 65, and you told me if that would be a good sign.
Yeah. So Bitcoin put in a higher low coming into the weekend. And after sweeping the 60K low, put in a nice daily higher low. And I wanted to see it trade above 65. And while it still can come down, even fairly significantly to like 62.5 to 65 again as kind of a zone, as long as it's
Right.
holding above there, I'm looking 68 to 70 and possibly more up into 72, 74 if structure remains intact in a higher low fashion.
So we might see 72 to 74.
That is a possibility. We got to see how 68 to 70 reacts if we do get it. And it's all contingent on Bitcoin remaining in an uptrending structure,
Right.
and maintaining the structure that it just put in. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it get into the, maybe low and possibly try for the mid 70s. But reality is that we got a lot of economic stuff that's still it actually looks good. Like there's the economic stuff actually looks good, especially as you mentioned with oil coming down, which is something that we want to see here in the US for WTI crude. We'd like to actually see it where you'd really like to see it, Rob, especially over the summers. You want to see it below 80 and starting to push in and below 75 and staying there coming into midterms.
Mm-hmm.
That would give the Fed, which I don't think the Fed is going to be cutting anytime soon, but that
You
would
don't
give
think
the Fed the
you don't
leeway
think
to
they'll
do
even
so.
make a small? You don't think they'll even do a quarter basis point cut?
I would be surprised. The main reason why is I think they want to see a lower floor, right? Wherever that floor is, whether it's here or lower. And preferably I think that the Fed's going to want to see under $75 oil or $75 oil and under as kind of the floor area, even if it's bouncing around between, the low 70s and low 80s. I think they want to see that come down because that brings CPI inflation
Mhm.
down, which we already saw core. Everybody's making a big deal last week or the week before about core inflation hitting, or I'm sorry, in CPI inflation hitting 4.2%. But what they weren't telling everybody in that is that core inflation month over month actually came down 0.1%. So that's what the Fed is actually watching when it comes to rate cuts is core inflation numbers. And I think that it's going to take
Mhm.
time with sustained lower prices for oil for them to consider actually or making a good case to the
Landy,
cut.
Landy, I think I've thought for a while, and again, I don't want you to go too deep into it. I don't want to lose everybody in a deep macroeconomic analysis, but on the surface, I've felt for a long time like the Fed's forecasting models are messed up, and truthfully, they're always too little, too late, or too much, too soon. Never too soon. They're never too soon.
They're
Um,
always late.
and
Yeah.
that they the entire Keynesian economic model, which again, I'm not suggesting like supply and demand don't matter, but that whole model is kind of an outdated way to look at a broad way at economics. Like it's sort of the same way I would say AI has altered how we would look at human learning,
Hmm.
and social media has altered how we look at engagement. Blockchain crypto has altered what TradFi will look like. It just doesn't really hold up. I mean, it does at certain base levels, but that it fundamentally doesn't account for a lot of things. So the simplest thing, like high employment, is a good thing.
Yes.
Economic growth is a
Wage
good thing,
growth.
whereas the Fed goes,
Yeah.
oh, need to cool the economy off. I'm like, do you really?
Yeah, that's you're pointing to a European system that has been imposed on the United States for a very long time. And I think what we need is a Bretton Woods 3.0. And that
Mhm.
is where we have a robust manufacturing base, we have job growth, and we have, more importantly, wage growth. And what the Fed has done for my entire lifetime, and for the majority of yours as well, is stamp out any kind of growth here, which has created and deepened the K-shaped economy and exported manufacturing and jobs overseas.
Right,
So,
right,
that's because they see wage growth as bad, and because that's inflationary that's good inflation. You want that kind of
right,
inflation. Um,
right.
and you can see what this administration is doing is they're pushing for wage inflation, job growth, and economic growth here at home. And they know that the solution to the inflation problem is bringing energy costs down, because energy
Yeah,
costs
yep.
is what drives the artificial inflation and creates and deepens that K. So if we can fill out that K-shaped economy and start rebuilding the middle class, we've got an incredibly bright future ahead of us here in the United
I
States. So
agree.
I think
I
they're
agree.
doing it right.
And I want to give Trump real credit for all this, including the tariff policy, which, I mean, I get it. I don't think most of the media understands anything about economics, and they wouldn't care if they did because Trump just triggers them. But I
Yeah.
do think there was a certain genius underneath. And I know where some of that came from, right? Some of that came from certain conservative think tanks and individuals who I think were pushing Trump in this direction for a minute in a good way. Um, but I do think that like this overall broad approach they've taken to the U.S. economy has been really positive. Now, again, we won't see all the results right away, but we will start seeing them over time. And I think
Mhm.
I don't know. I just think he was smart about pushing in that direction. I always hated how much people went after him on the tariffs. I was always like, why are they so why are
He
they
got
so
the right
worked up
guy to
about the
do it,
tariffs?
Rob. Here's the
What's
thing
that?
Trump has been talking about this type of economics since the 80s, at least that
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
remember, right? But
yeah.
in his first term, the team that he had around him were not able to implement it. But then he got the right team around him. And in particular, big shout out to Scott Bissett, because he is
Mhm, yeah.
the guy that laid forward the path via the Treasury
Agreed.
to get this
Totally.
done.
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's really what
No.
matters. You gotta have people that are gonna be pushing your policy and actually have solutions to those problems, and Scott Besant's one of the most brilliant minds to do it, in my opinion. So,
No, I agree. And I do think, again, he got a lot of flack for Trump got a lot of flack early on for trying to push the economy in this way. And, Trump's brilliance was also surrounding himself with people who knew how to make money.
yes.
It's easy to go after people who make a lot of money. But the truth is, you can have your issues about whether people should pay more taxes, right? Or whether, there should be some more redistribution of wealth. But you can't argue that they're successfully using a capitalist system to make wealth. Like, so if nothing else, they understand how to make money. Like, it's not like they only understand how rich people can make money. That's the thing I think the progressives often get wrong. It's like billionaires aren't just good at making billionaires money. They're good at making wealth. They're good at building value. They're good at making money. That's a good thing. Like, yes, you could argue more people need to be able to access it. Fair enough. But I always
Mhm.
hated that, like, instead you'd put in like a, what's her name, Janet Yellen or whatever. You put in these people, Robert Reich, people who have no idea how to make money. They just study it at Harvard. It's like, okay, that's the
Yep.
worst way. That's the worst thing ever, is to let like academics tell you how to run an economy. Like, how's that going to work out for you?
Well, it's the same thing as like the people, David and I talked a little bit about this. It's the same people attacking Elon Musk right now, but ignoring that he just made 4,000 or 4,500 millionaires, just regular hardworking folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that entire complex that SpaceX built and all of the different industries that they're building around it creates entire communities and offshoots that
Mm-hmm.
help the economy. And I mean, you could take the 4,500 jobs of newly minted millionaires because they've been, working there and they got stock options. Well, you can take that and you can extend it out to the local communities where they all work, where there's entire industrial bases that survive off of
Yep.
SpaceX building. There's entire
Yep.
communities that sprout up that it turns into billions and billions of dollars of revenue generation and jobs for people, in the thousands, in the tens of thousands, in fact, in certain communities. So, I mean, look, it's like when coal was being killed in the Appalachian Mountains, right? What happened to, those communities? They died. They
Right.
went away.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so while everybody can, oh, look at the coal barons, they're so rich and not, well, guess what? They were supporting entire towns all throughout the Appalachian Mountains that had
Yep.
thousands of
Yep.
people that they employed, thousands and thousands of people. And when it collapsed,
Yep. Yep.
they're all destitute now. So,
Yeah.
I think that the champagne socialists, those rich people that tell you that you need to pay your fair share if you're rich. Well, they don't want to pay their fair share. They just want to tell everybody else how to run their lives. And they attack guys like Elon Musk and other capitalists, mainly because they don't want the smoke. They don't want the
Yeah.
smoke. They want you to listen to their ideals. Do as I say, not as I
Yeah.
do.
So,
And
Landy, it's interesting. I was thinking when we were talking about this, the person that came to mind for me was Steve Moore, from the Club for Growth guy.
mhm.
Um, and I talked to Steve a bunch of times. And I wish, I know he withdrew himself as a Fed chair nominee because of things he had said. But
Yeah.
I think he's somebody who would, like, I think people like Steve Moore would be good on the Federal Reserve. Um, and I get it, and he's part of that Arthur Laffer group and Larry Kudlow and whatever, Kudlow.
Yes.
But I like the way they think. Like, I actually think, I think it made sense. I just think, like, again, sort of like, that's what I think we need to. I think that we need to change the lining in terms of who's inside the macroeconomic policy machine in the U.S. And I
I
think that
agree.
starts with the Fed. And I mean, I'd like to get rid of the Fed altogether, but that's a whole nother story. But at a minimum, this institution has done more to damage growth in this country than a lot of others, and it just keeps remaining untouched
Yeah.
or tinkered.
Yeah, the big thing is the Fed is valuable to the American people in an economic system that benefits the American people. And it is an absolute devastating force in an economic system that we are currently transitioning from.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
and and in this case, the creation of the Fed and the implementation and the pressures being put on the United States as a country from outside nations via the Fed, via currency swaps, via
mhm.
bond markets, and all this stuff really came down from the gatherers in Switzerland and then via London, right? All of that was
Yep,
arranged by the London bankers, and a lot of
yep,
this was to rein the United States in post World War II.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you said a Bretton Woods 3.0, right? I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff got, and again, most people don't even know what Bretton Woods was, but let's just say a lot of this got put in place around the Bretton Woods era. It got put in place pre-World War I and post-World War I and post-World War II, right? We put in place an economic system that did serve a function, and you might argue was always like off kilter, but I just feel like now it's way off kilter. And again, when Trump goes, I'm putting in a new Fed Reserve chair, I'm like, but that's not ultimately enough. Like we're fundamentally operating with a framework that's so outdated. It's like, remember when Billy Joel was considered, maybe you're too young. Remember when Billy Joel was considered like hard rock and roll? Like, I know he's a rock and roller and all, but I'm like, I remember as a kid, my parents thinking Billy Joel was like, whatever. Now it's like you're going to play that shit in old people's homes. It's like, help them fall asleep. Like, it's sort of like, I feel like that. Like, it's like Elvis used to be so, oh my God. And now you think of Elvis as like quaint, good old fashioned rock and roll. Like, that's what I think of like with things like the Fed. I'm like, this is nice. This is like my grandparents' economic policies. Can we create stuff that actually operates for the real world we live in? And maybe I'm being naive to think it would be that simple, but I don't know. I feel like this is part of our problem. Our macroeconomic, indicators and institutions are really not designed for the world we live in. They're slow. They're outdated. They move like it's snail's pace.
Yeah.
That's just a yes. I get a yes. You agree?
Well,
Landy,
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree.
Wow.
Look,
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, if I had David Goxie's horn, because Landy just agreed without saying anything else. That or you just too tired to respond?
No, because this is all linked back to the current conflict that we're going to discuss here, probably fairly quickly.
In
But
about 30 seconds, we're getting there.
because it's all related. What was
Mhm.
happening? What happened in the United States at the termination of Bretton Woods and the system? It was effectively terminated in 1971. In 1973 is when we had the Gulf member states get together as
And
gas
form
prices
OPEC,
were going,
right?
for OPEC, and Saudi Arabia became the squeaky wheel, right? You remember this, 1973 to 1976, when we had rising oil costs around the world. It was interesting that I'm just going through because I'm searching I have a local
Yeah, people
database.
don't remember. If you're not old enough, people don't remember. Like, anybody under 50 doesn't probably. I mean, there were those lines. People had massive lines for gas. People would
Yeah.
wait like around the block to get gas. Like, like it was a big deal. And you'd think, now it's like people are like, oh, gas prices are high. They are, but nobody's waiting in line. Nobody's like lined up around the like your nearest Quick Trip or 7-Eleven or Mobile or whatever, like to get
Well,
like your gas.
what's
Like,
really interesting about this is because remember 2 years later in 1973 is when we went on the currency float, right? The
mhm,
currency float
mhm,
system. So you had all of the fixed rate systems basically were taken down within 2 years of the
right.
Bretton Woods collapse. And then 3 years later, we had the, um, we had the formal
Thank you,
Bretton
Richard
Woods.
Nixon.
Yeah, the formal in 1976 was the formal collapse, but this all coincided with what
Thank
was
you,
going
Jimmy
on in the
Carter.
Gulf states. Yeah, this all coincided
I
um,
know.
with what
And
happened in Doha, Qatar
it all
in
coincided
1976.
also with the lead up to what led to the revolution in Iran, the takeover of the U.S. embassy,
That's
and
my point.
and the rise of the
Because
fundamentalists and OPEC at the same time. All of this coincided in like a juggernaut of the late
Yeah,
70s.
because in 1976, after for those that maybe don't know a little bit of history, after Bretton Woods, so there was basically the agreement was to have a 5-year drawdown, and then in 1973 is when the fixed rate system went away, and then in 1976 the IMF amended the rules to allow officially for floating exchange rates, And then that same year in 1976 in Doha, Qatar, there was a big argument because we had gas prices rising globally. There was a big argument between the OPEC nations, and Saudi Arabia stepped away from the table and basically said,
Right.
look, we have a ton of oil because it's very easy. Their cost per they do like a cost per person, but essentially they can pump oil cheaper than any other nation on the planet. No matter how much oil you got under your feet, they can pump it cheaper.
Right.
And
Right.
they did not agree to the raise of oil prices. They felt that it was going to damage the world economy and that other nations would find alternative solutions. So they began to undercut. And who did they undercut? Who was across the table from them? The Shah of Iran. And you got to remember, the Shah of Iran was making a lot of promises. The economy was growing exponentially, but it was much more costly for them to pump oil. And what the Saudis did is they undercut them. And when they undercut
Excuse me.
them, this took the winds out of the sails of the Shah's plan to continue the economic build out for Iran, which then led to the revolution. Now, there's other things at play, but when you look at the actual numbers and the process to get there, this was
Right.
London via the IMF with pressure on the United States to actually come off the gold standard, get out of Bretton
Yeah.
Woods, and then
No, I
create the
think you're
floating
right.
fixed rate currencies. So
I think you're right. And look, again, I don't want to go too in the weeds only because I think sometimes the weeds these days make people miss it's the forest for the trees kind of thing.
yeah,
And I'm worried about that with a lot of things, but I think you're spot on about what actually happened and why. But to me, this has all been a 50-year evolution to where we are, right?
yeah,
And Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, DeFi, everything is kind of the world economy shifting, even with the role China plays. Like it's a new world economy. And I'm worried, Landy, that we're still playing with old world tools. We're still playing with the tools of the 70s, even some cases the 50s. And like we're slow to modernize. It's kind of like time
well,
to get the machine up to speed.
I think we're seeing that process occur right now here in the United States, and I think that's one of the reasons why when you see the administration touting how much economic investment is coming into the United States,
Hmm.
the reason why is because the rest of the world now, they understand what the United States is doing. This isn't
Yep.
explicitly blasted out there on the media airwaves because most of the media personalities that are on TV can't even comprehend any of this shit anyway. They
Right.
don't understand what's happening in the world around them, and it doesn't benefit them to explain it because they get far more ratings being anti-Trump through all of the clips that pro-Trump people clip up and put online anyway. So that's one of the reasons why there's such a strong anti-Trump movement throughout mainstream media is a
Right.
lot of people think, well, mainstream media is dead. No, you know who revived mainstream media? The We the Media movement revived
Yeah.
them because they get so much exposure through all of the clipping that's done, and they are able to keep on going. So, and this is, this kind of leads to Iran and this deal that's supposed to be signed on the 19th. So I know your feelings on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
you know mine.
I know. So I'm going to make this easier for everybody, Landy.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you a few questions and just try to get yes, no, sort of in the ballpark answers. Okay.
sure.
I'm going to start this out by saying, which I have not disclosed before on this show. When I was in college, when the hostages were released, and Bruce Langan, who was the charge d'affaires, is the highest ranking U.S. official in Iran at the time, was
Yeah,
held captive. He was away from the embassy, so he was held captive wherever he was for the 444 days.
yeah,
I met him shortly after that because I was in college at a small liberal arts college in the Midwest, and I was a political science major, and I hosted a speech that he gave, and he and I sat and talked for hours afterward. And it fundamentally affected my very young brain about what actually happened in that year and a half, in that takeover, in the in the mindset of what this Iranian revolution was and did. So, Landy,
Mhm.
my concern is, leaving the politics aside, my major concern, I mean, other than the parts where I go, okay, Trump's touting that the Straits of Hormuz will be open, and you'd be like, well, that wasn't a big deal. Clearly, it was a big deal, since that seems to be the single big concession we just got for 60 days of talks was, you guys open the strait, we lift the blockade. I'm concerned, forget about that. I'm concerned that we lift the blockade. I don't care how they get money, whether we lift sanctions or corporations put the money in. I don't care where the hundreds of millions come from. I'm super concerned that we are giving breath to a regime whose fundamental interest is not in making a better Middle East or growing or investment. It is to simply, like a parasite, survive until it can kill the host. So if I'm Iran, all I'm doing is grasping for breath. Yes or no? I'm buying 60 days to talk. I'm going to promise everything, do nothing. I'm going to stall. I'm going to avoid. I'm going to try to get any economic concessions I can get. And my goal is Donald Trump can only be in office for a couple more years. And when he's gone, there'll be nobody with the balls to bring in the military if we don't do what we said. We've simply just pushed the can down the road. Am I right or wrong? I mean, again, aside from, don't take the side of what we're getting with new energy routes and all that. In terms of this regime, aren't we really, there's no part of this regime that's going to truly comply with building a brand new, beautiful Middle East.
I disagree.
You
I
think they
disagree
want
from
it?
a
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Here's why. I'll quickly explain why. And I know that
Before
I've
you
said
say
this.
why you disagree, wait, before you say why
Sure.
you disagree, do you understand? I don't mean like, are you smart enough? Obviously. I'm saying, do you get my argument? Why I would
Oh,
say,
I get your concerns. Yes.
I think they're fundamentally built they're not built to fit in. They're built on a religious worldwide mission to destroy us and Israel. And there's no end that's before that. It's all or
I
nothing.
I disagree with that, and I think that if you cut them, you see that that is not the truth, and we have plenty of examples of that. Primarily all of the mullahs and all of the IRGC top brass sends their kids to Western nations to be educated. They don't follow any of
Mm-hmm.
the fundamental religious values. It's a dog and pony show that's been supported by London. That has been my contention for many, many, many years, including throughout GWAT, is that we're battling ourselves because London is the through line that they have been propped up. Now, many point to China and Russia, but that's opportunism. The West has funded Iran and the proxies of Iran and helped build what Iran became in terms of the fundamentalist regime from the outset. And the goal was to have an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a good enemy and you've got a boogeyman, then you can keep people scared and you can fund the things you want to fund. So I fundamentally disagree. Yes, there are hardliner fundamentalists within it, but if you look at the top brass across the board, they don't follow what they preach. They don't practice what they preach. They're purely there as puppets and shows. And I know a little thing about puppets as a Bitcoin puppet over here. That's
That's
part
right.
of
You
it.
do. You know what about puppets.
But you
Okay.
know,
But if they're
uh,
puppets, hold on. If they're puppets, I would make the same argument with China. Like, and I was in China in the mid 80s before the wall in Berlin came down and everything. You saw a country where the elite, well, at some point during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao took the elite down too. But ultimately, and even, I was in the Soviet Union in the mid 80s and had some great stories of talking to people who were part of the government. Like, they didn't practice what they preached either, right? The elites have
yeah,
always, Gavin Newsom didn't practice what he preached. Elites never do. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean fundamentally that they're not committed to the system. It just means it's like, what's that line? Do what we say, not what we do, or whatever. This for other, you know what I'm talking about. It's like
Sure, sure.
elites
But
never take
but
the
my
hard.
my retort to that is they absolutely do when when the ground beneath their feet moves enough, they will move with it because they're all snakes. And this administration understands that. And in fact, our military has known this for a very long time. And this is where I think that when you start looking at China or you look at Russia, the difference with China and Russia is that they have resources, they have relationships, and have maintained relationships with the West that allowed them to grow to such a power that these Western European nations and even the US to a certain extent became reliant on them, whether it was United States for cheap product or whether it
Mhm.
was cheap energy out of Russia. This is something that Iran couldn't offer. Iran was specifically because if you look at how much they can pump out of the ground in terms of energy, it's really not that significant. It is significant when you start looking at how it could influence markets and all that. When you look at
Right,
what the capabilities are in oil under the feet, all of the other Gulf nations far outweigh them by a lot. Does that mean that they can't make a
right,
ton of money and they can't become a nation that's prosperous? No. But the fact of the matter is that through the use of a fundamentalist a regime that can fund terrorism all throughout the Gulf nations and all around the Middle East, you get a boogeyman that you can keep attacking, keep raising dollars
yeah,
off the back of, and keep building out military infrastructure. And it keeps the United States in line because the United States military being the most powerful, who does Europe lean on? You know, Europe leans. Look at NATO. Look at all the European Union.
right.
They're all crying about the
So,
United States the moment we say no. Boo.
Randy, all right, let's just say a part of what you're saying is true. I'm going to split the difference and say, remember that show, The Americans on FX?
I remember I didn't watch it though.
It's about two KGB agents who are planted in the US when they're like 17, and they
Mhm.
build a life in America, and they have kids, a family. The kids have no idea, right? The kids become like normal American teenagers, right? They
Yes.
have no clue their parents are spies, right? Carrie Russell plays the wife, and the husband is and Matthew Rees, whatever. They have a fundamental split over time where he starts really getting why America works and sort of is
Yes.
like, this isn't actually pretty good, you know? And
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
remains, for her, it's an act. It always comes back to the revolution, right? She will
Yes.
pretend to be a good middle America 1980s housewife, but
Mhm.
in reality, she's like a diehard, you know, ideological KGB commie. I feel like a little bit of that's Iran. Like there may be people in this government who are like, you know what? Maybe modernization and maybe working and putting investments in and building all this might be good. And there's others who are like to the core, we are on a religious mission and we
Yeah, like
don't end
Golubath.
till the white Western Satan and the Jews are dead.
Yeah.
And they're
I mean,
both
look,
there.
uh, well, I also believe that
But
the,
they are both there, right? You acknowledge
oh,
part of
yeah.
that
No, no, no,
government.
for sure, for sure. But I don't think it's at the very top of the power structure with the exceptions of people like Golubath and a few others. But they also know when their goose is cooked, right? And there is no turning back. And this is a situation, reading through, we don't have the official agreement, but
Right.
part of the sticking points that I said and now has been confirmed is they get nothing. There is no funding, there is no nothing until the very first incentive-based checkpoint is getting the nuclear material. And you know this just as well as I do. They never once controlled the strait after their navy went down, after their air defenses, and after their ballistic missiles got buried in the side of mountains, after a lot of their drone factories and infrastructure got hit. They don't really have any way to control the strait. And I discussed this with you. They wouldn't have threatened right before this the Red Sea because they know they have no control. It's been the United States in
Right.
control the
Here's the
entire time.
only thing, Landy, here's the only thing I will say to that, right? I get it, but
Yeah.
and you may have an answer for this, and I'm not sure you would know even if you give me an answer. I'm totally baffled why Trump, in his own words, to the New York Times on Sunday, made such a point out of they're opening the strait. Like if they were never in control, why is that the single thing they're doing to buy 60 more
Oh,
days of conversation
easy.
and we lift our blockade? Why is the single thing they're doing opening the strait if they never really were controlling it to begin with? Is that a
Oh,
political stunt on Trump's part? Because he's literally
yes,
like, we're getting the strait open. And people are going, well, the strait was
absolutely.
already open. Okay, I'm not even saying it was already open. I'm like, how is that our like concession from them? They're opening the strait, so good. Now we'll have conversations. I'm like, what?
It's an optics game. So, and this is absolutely, this actually is part of the war. You concede something that you control, and you make it a win for the other side. But this isn't a win for Iran. This is a win for the markets. This is pure
Yes,
market
100%.
manipulation.
But
That's
but I'm
exactly
saying if they didn't control it, why didn't we just make it a win for the markets and
Well,
keep it open?
because you can't, because that's not what the bankers want to hear. That's not what the United States financial institutions and investors want to hear. They want to hear, because if he came out and said we control the strait, I mean, it's already been proven 100 million barrels of oil moved through that strait during this time period that we've had this quote unquote ceasefire that really hasn't been a ceasefire at all. But point
It's the
being
joke
is,
of the ceasefire. If this is a ceasefire, I swear to God, this is going to be my new metaphor. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to use this with everything. Like, this is the worst example of a ceasefire. No, it's a ceasefire. Well, they didn't really shoot. They didn't hurt anybody when they shot at our ships. Well, we didn't really kill anything. Well, I mean, we only blew up small things. It's like this is the joke of
Well,
ceasefires. Like,
I mean, it goes both ways, right? We were we were beating the shit out of the coast over there as well.
I
So our
know. I'm
military
just
is putting
saying.
in work
No,
the
but
entire
nobody
time.
broke the ceasefire. We were just
Yeah.
tapping them back a little bit.
Well,
Nobody. I'm like, wow, what is a ceasefire? It's a whole new definition of ceasefire.
the big thing is when you see 100 million barrels of oil move through the strait, and this was being verified through landings at ports and manifests and stuff. So we knew that this was going on while they're saying the strait is closed. And the point is this is about controlling the energy markets. And my entire point the entire time has been that this has been a shot across the bow at. Well,
Oh, where'd you go?
is that me? Am I back?
That was you.
I'm
This
back.
wasn't me this time. I'm all
Oh God.
good. My tech is rocking and rolling now.
So my point the entire time about that was that this is to put pressure on Europe, especially giving them a little bit of a bone, throwing them a bone with like, yeah, no, the strait's totally open now. Throws them a bone because Brent absolutely tanks. WTI premium gap between them between WTI and Brent started to narrow exponentially, which gives them relief in their economy right when you want to go into the G7, right when you want to start finalizing all these damn deals, right? So, and the big thing here is the straight. It's Schrodinger's straight for a reason. It was being used as an optical pivot point for both the United States and Iran. And you know that who never talked about it not once? Israel. Why did Israel
Yeah.
never talk about it not once? Because they know if they say a peep about the optics game, they can upset the markets, and Trump would be very,
Yeah.
very upset when he's already upset with them trying to sabotage the deals via Europe, by the way. Um, look,
Well,
this is where I think that when you and I talked, and I had mentioned that there is no way that anything moves forward, no matter what is signed, until we get the nuclear material and it is destroyed.
I don't agree.
And
Landy, I don't
hold
agree
on,
with you.
hold on.
Not the way it's
It
going to
has
play
been
out.
confirmed as of today. It has been confirmed. Let's see. So, there is no checkpoints and incentives must be meet. The first checkpoint to be met is obviously opening the Strait of Hormuz, and
Yeah.
then nuclear material. There will be no money traded hands. There is nothing of the sort. And in addition,
So,
the U.S. will keep its current military posture
Yes.
to make sure that Iran is going to say what they're going to do. We know what
Yeah.
they've been about for the past 47 years, essentially, blah, 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 blah.
Landy, I want to just take each of those. Let's start with the last
Sure.
one. We'll keep our current military posture to make sure Iran does what it says it will do. Okay. Let me just stipulate. Fine. Iran's not going to do this is where I
Okay.
get wound up.
If you
Hold on.
right,
They are
but
not going to do, hold on. They are not going to do what they say they're going to do because it's not fundamentally what this government, their government, is fundamentally designed for. They aren't designed to be a rational actor with a self-interest. I know individuals have it. Their entire it's like looking at a religion. Their
Okay.
entire motivation, their entire reason for existence is to create turmoil and launch a holy war.
I
So
don't
they
disagree
don't
with
benefit.
you.
They simply will survive. They won't
Okay.
ever agree to give up nuclear access
So,
or whatever. They'll
okay.
pretend.
So,
So how do we
uh,
keep our
do
troops there for
you
the next 12 years? When Trump's
No,
out
no,
of
no.
office, so
Let's
home.
wait, whoa, 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 whoa. See, this is where I fundamentally think that you have Iran derangement syndrome, and I'm going to explain why. You
Oh
literally
man,
just said, okay, listen to me. I know I'm being funny with you,
I
um,
know, but I
you
don't.
need to,
I actually
you,
have the ability to see what somebody's saying
but
and doing
you're
and not
missing
be
something
blinded by
big
the
here. You're missing the point. Rob, you're looking right past the point. If we do not move our military assets because we're saying, hey, we're keeping our military assets there and we're keeping our current military posture the same as when we were striking
yeah.
them, what do you think happens, Rob, if they don't make good on their side? Do you think that we're just going to be like, oh man, they got us again and we're going to walk away? Or do you think we're going to flatten the shit out of them?
What I think is, I'll tell you exactly what I think to that. I think that they have, I literally think they are having this very conversation and going, as long as we appear to comply,
No,
get
they
close
have
to the
60
midterms.
days, Rob.
Hold on. Get close to the midterms. They won't do anything in the midterms. Trump will not launch a kinetic war 3 weeks before the midterms. So they know they'll get through that. And then they're going to bank on Democrats winning in Congress. And 2 years after that, Trump's out of office. All they got to do is
What does
drag this
Democrats
out
winning
for
in
two and a
Congress
half
have
years. Hold
anything to
on.
do with
In
this?
2.5 years, there'll be a new president who won't have the balls to keep forces there and will withdraw them. Iran's
No,
just they're playing the long game. They
no,
don't have
I'm
to win.
sorry.
They just
Everything that you just said, Rob, makes 0 sense. And here's
zero
why.
sense that they would
Yeah,
say, 2015,
here
they said we won't have
this
nuclear
is
weapons.
fear. This is fear that you think that
Not fair.
that Trump would not hit them where it hurts. What is Democrats being
Well,
in
I just said
Congress
he
going to
won't hit him
do?
a month before the
Nothing.
midterms. That's all I said. He
Nothing.
won't do it a month before the midterms.
Let
He
let
won't.
me let me put it to you this way.
No, Landy, he
Even
won't do it a month
Democrats,
before the midterms.
well, look, you got to understand there is no, well, one, this gives them till August. He can literally clean them up in a week. This
But
is
they're
they
basically till August. They've got 60 days to just start talking about stuff. Then they're going to ask for another 60 days because of technical complications.
my
Landy,
point
let
to
me ask
you
you. Wait,
is
before you give me the answer, hold on. Let me ask you a simple question. If everything you said is true, let's just say you're right about everything. And before you just give me an answer, think for a second. Why didn't we just then say, tell you what, guys, we'll lift the blockade and theoretically not do any more kinetic military stuff on you, but we'll lift the blockade, not when you open the Strait of Hormuz. We'll lift it when we have the uranium. You give us the uranium. We don't need promises. We don't need commitments that you're not going to do a nuclear weapon, which you told Obama 11 years ago. When we have the nuclear dust, we lift the blockade and stop bombing you. How about, why wouldn't that be our response? If Trump's not worried about military action, how it's affecting politics and oil prices, why wouldn't we just say, we lift the blockade when we have the nuclear dust? End of story, no negotiations, do whatever you want. Israel can bomb the fuck out of Lebanon. We don't care. You give us the nuclear dust, we make your problems go away. If you're right, Landy, why isn't that what we said?
Because that is not the faction that we're dealing with. See, this is what you haven't considered.
No, come on, that's not a real answer.
Yes, it
Come
is.
on.
Yes,
Well,
it is,
if
because
if you were
they're
right
not
about
dealing.
everything, that would be the
I
way to
can
get the
tell you right
result.
now, and this has been confirmed by the administration, it's been confirmed by the mediators in both Qatar and Pakistan, that these are not the faction that we're dealing with. In fact, the faction that you have to deal with in that case, if you keep striking over and over again, you run out of the people that actually have the access and ability
Well, okay,
to
don't
allow
strike. Just
inspectors to
okay,
go in.
okay. I adjust my argument. Don't strike. Just keep a military block. Just keep a naval blockade on them, strangle their economy till we get the nuclear dust. You give us the
Because
nuclear
that's
dust,
not
we let your economy breathe.
because that's not how you ingratiate any side. If you have a side
I
that's
don't want to
shaky,
ingratiate them. They're not
it's
reliable
not all
players.
IRGC over there, Rob, and you know it. It's not all IRGC. They have been decapitated so deep within their ranks that the Artesh has more power than they do at this point. They're simply figureheads. You know that. I know that. Anybody, any kind of Middle East analyst knows this as well. What you have to understand is IRGC had cut ties. They had all those strings cut along the way, which is what led to the economic collapse in the first place. They never would have allowed their economy to collapse if the strings weren't cut. All right. That's the first thing that happened. And you have to actually plot out what's going on there. There's like 40 different factions there because of the way that they decentralized their government and the way they've decentralized the IRGC, the besieged, the military, the way that they actually the way that they actually decentralized the government itself outside of those particular power structures. The fact of the matter is we don't actually know. We don't actually know who we're dealing with,
What will it take for you
meaning you and
to
I don't know this.
Well, of course not. What will it take for you to? I mean, again, you know, you're pretty ironclad. I mean, I appreciate how smart you are about this, but sometimes I think you're just determined not to. Is there any scenario where you will admit that we made the wrong call? And is there
But
any scenario where you'll admit that if they do blank, that if they pretend they
okay,
have no intention of
but
getting rid of the nuclear dust,
okay,
just
so
pretend. If they have no intention of complying with anything and they simply stall long enough that Donald Trump's not in
okay.
office and do exactly what they did after 2015, and 7 years from now, we're facing a nuclear Iran again, would you then admit, I guess it didn't work?
Well, first of all, you need to understand who I am. I'm an analyst. I don't play the what if game. I play what is reality and what are the conditions that
Okay.
need to be met.
Would that reality
So
apply for you? If
not at
they
this particular point, right? Because here's the reality. The reality is that if we are reading, if we're not going to see the agreement until after they even sign it, and
Right.
probably not till well after.
What
But
if the agreement says that we don't give them money, but we lift sanctions after they open the strait? Would that be a red flag for you? We don't actually give them a transfer of assets. We allow Europe to lift sanctions. Europe's dying to lift the sanctions.
well, Europe wouldn't be doing. We're the ones that are sanctioning them. So if we
Well, but no, but
unsanction
Europe,
them,
yes, the EU has their own stuff. They have their own
yeah,
restrictions.
but
I mean,
they
yes.
have no control over this situation. They're powerless
Okay,
right now.
so let's
So
just say
here's
they open the
okay.
strait and we hold on. They open the strait, we lift sanctions. At that point, will you go, wait a minute? Why
No.
are we lifting sanctions on them simply for saying we've opened the strait, which we technically
Well,
could have opened
first of
ourselves?
all,
Would you go at that
that's
point? That's too much
that
carrot.
was that was just ruled out by JD Vance. So let's just put that out there. But let's say in your hypothetical scenario they lifted sanctions. What are they going to be lifting them on, and what are they going to be trading the oil in, Rob?
I know. I don't care that it's in dollars.
You should. Here's why. Because if they are willing to deal in US dollars, you have to understand that that's a major concession for them. That is haram for them to deal in the US dollars if that's the case, because then they're being pulled into the US financial system and network. And just so you know what's wait before you continue. I want you to link this together with where Witkoff is going next. You know where he's going to be next, right? Later this week? Russia.
I don't Cuba. Oh, Russia.
Russia.
Okay.
He's going to be in Russia. So what you got to understand about this is if they lifted sanctions, I see this as a good thing. See, because this is war.
Wow. Wow.
What
Wow.
I want you
Wow,
to,
Andy.
here's why.
Wow.
Listen to me. Listen, I want you to hear me out
Wow.
on this because I
Oh,
want you to
I need to get
understand where I'm
sound
coming
effects.
from.
I need David's sound effects.
I want you to understand where I'm coming from because
If
would
they
you
lift
agree
sanctions,
that
it's a good thing.
would you agree that there is such a thing as economic warfare?
I would agree that if you were a litigator, you'd be devastatingly good in court. It's a good thing if, in fact, my client did shoot the person
I want
through
you
the head.
to answer this question. Do you think that there's such a thing as economic warfare?
Of course, we've been engaged in it since like 1790.
Yes.
The British taught us economic warfare.
Yeah, and then they dominated us in it, right? And that's true, by the way. But we're in this situation, audience, anybody watching, we're in this financial situation because Britain dominated the United States in economic warfare post World War II. That's why we are where we are. But
Yes.
my point to you being is that
Which is actually a great point that nobody realizes. Nobody
Yes.
realizes that Britain, like everybody thinks Britain is sort of like a secondary, like they kicked our ass in economic power after the war. It's only been the last 10, 15, maybe 18 years that they declined. Like maybe my
Yes.
numbers are off. But
Well, I think you're probably about right. And look, the reason why I would have no issue with that is because if they're trading in the US dollar, they're being yanked into the polar orbit, right? And into the United States. And my point about
all
this
right.
is it's very similar. All it takes to grease the wheel is exactly what we saw in Venezuela. I do not view the IRGC as the fundamentalist hardliners that even a lot of GWAT guys do. And the main reason why is because they have defied, just speaking back to earlier in the conversation, they have literally defied every one of the principles that they supposedly run their theocracy based on. And they also have an
Other
overflowing.
than hold on, other than the fact that if you were right about this, which I do not know that you are, I'm not saying you couldn't be. It's not clear to me then why they are literally taking their theocratic state to the next level internally and clamping down all dissent, erasing any. I mean, it makes no sense if they truly don't believe that.
No.
Why they?
That's
I mean,
simply
this is
power.
not a win. You will admit this is not a win for the Iranian people. That
Oh,
population is
this
going
is
to get
where
fucked so badly. It's not funny.
this is where there's two sides to how I feel about this. From a strategic economic warfare and kinetic warfare and I think ultimately to the United States benefit at the end of the day, this situation will be resolved for our interests. And unfortunately, the Iranian people will continue to suffer. That is the actual great travesty in all of this. And this is where I do think, though, because of the economic pressures, and once you allow the United States in, which, by the way, I don't think this is going to go through. I think that the Iranians regime will do exactly that, not live up to the agreement, and we start to strike them again. That's actually what I do
Right.
believe.
Hold
If
on,
we're
we've
going to
only
play
got
what
a few minutes left. Let's
Sure.
end on a point of agreement here. One,
Yeah.
I think you might be right about that, but I think the other thing is, I don't think Israel has any intention of allowing Iran. Clearly wants Hezbollah and is giving Hezbollah the green light to keep going.
Yes.
Israel knows that. There is no version of Netanyahu that goes, it's okay for you, Mr. Trump, to have your little peace agreement. We're going to let Hezbollah wreak its little havoc and pretend they're not doing it. I think, if anything, he might go all harder in. He might literally go, fuck it, we're taking Hezbollah out at the fucking waist, forget the knees, and not care. And it could be Israel that upends this whole thing, because I don't think that Netanyahu sits by and agrees to let this happen. I could be wrong.
I think that if the United States actually, here's a scenario that I could see playing out. I could see a scenario where the United States and the IAEA go in, destroy and or obtain the nuclear material and actually do it. And then as soon as that is done, that I could see Israel absolutely just going full campaign against Hezbollah and in Lebanon and just flattening everything over there. I could actually see that. And then see, this is you got to think about from the Iranian position. This is likely
Randy,
what they're afraid of.
You keep saying we get the nuclear stuff. I don't think we're going to get that stuff for a year.
Well, here's the thing. If we get Americans and international organizations on the ground, I think that's what matters. If that is not allowed by Iran,
you actually think Iran's going to let us walk in there and get our hands on this stuff?
If that is part of the agreement, that is the checkpoint. That's my point to you, is what you need to understand. And we have a little bit over, unless you have to go. But what my point to you is, okay, my point to you is this, that is the main sticking point of this entire agreement. Nothing else in this agreement matters. It's all niceties. All right. Because the fact of the matter is,
I agree with that.
The point of the sword is at their throat. If they so much as screw up, they will get flattened. And here's their concern. If I'm an IRGC hardliner, here's my concern. I let the United States in, we sign this agreement, and let's say somebody within the regime goes against my wishes and lets the United States and international forces in to actually go and inspect, obtain, and destroy nuclear material and wind down the rest of these systems. My concern as a hardliner would be, holy shit, we've lost everything now. We are going to get destroyed, right? So what would your main thing be? Bait them into the ground and kill them all. That would be your main thing, is to allow them in to kill them.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't disagree with you.
I could see Israel firing nukes at Lebanon. That's actually my concern is Israel firing nuclear weapons. We all know they have nuclear weapons, by the way, folks.
I know they do. I don't think they fire them at Lebanon. But that said, I don't think, first of all, I think part of this we don't know till we have to see. I think you're wrong about when we are going to allow Iran to get access to capital. I don't think it's going to be only when they give us the nuclear dust. I think you're going to see in the next 3 to 4 weeks some very quiet version of us allowing them access either to their own funds or to capital. We won't literally hand them over money, because that would look like what Obama did, or Biden. But we will allow them. I think that's Iran's only thing they want. In exchange for doing anything, they want access to money, because we can't take the money back once they have it. That's all they want. They're not intending to comply with any of this in the long term. They just want to get as much access back to their capital so they can do what they do. Call me Iran derangement syndrome. I don't think they have any interest in stepping into the modern world and being part of a brand new Middle East.
I will stake my claim on, if they do not give up the dust and the nuclear material, they will get flattened. And nothing else is happening until that. Nothing substantial, meaning that $1 million here or there in ships going through, and a couple million barrels of oil here and there.
What if we lift a couple $100 million in sanctions relief?
That's nothing. You know how bad they are right now. That does nothing for them. Who are they gonna go and apply get weapons from?
Wait, hold on. So you're backtracking. Now you went from
not.
You said we're not going to give it. Wait. You said we're not going to give them anything until they give us the dust. Wait.
We're not.
Well, if we only gave them $1 billion,
listen to what I'm saying. No. Don't reinterpret what I said. If we're lifting the blockade, what does that do? That
No, I'm
allows
not talking. Yes, that allows. I'm talking literally lifting actual sanctions that are holding
no,
them
it's
back, holding money we're
literally the
holding them.
Trump, JD Vance, who is supposed to be the one that's spearheading this, has literally just said that's not happening. They're not getting
Well, he said it
any.
might come through private companies.
No, he literally just got on TV just before we went live and said that there is no money going to them until they meet the incentive-based structure
No money from
defined
the
in the contract.
government. He said it might come through private companies.
Because of what though? You have to understand the nuance there. It's because if we lift the blockade and they are unsanctioned boats, they're going to be trading in the dollar. That means they have to deal with American companies. They're not going to let them deal in the yuan. There's no way. They're not going to let them deal in the yuan or Bitcoin or
The
rubles.
conversation will continue.
Yeah.
I feel like you keep adding little caveats. Like you
No,
went
it's not a
from
caveat.
wait, you went hold on. You went from there will be no allowing them access to anything until they give us the dust to
Yes.
well, if it ends up being $1 billion here or there,
No, it's
that's
not
US
if. No, no,
dollars.
no, no. I'm saying that they even because if you lift the blockade, they can move oil, right? Do you agree?
Mhm.
Okay, so you lift
Yeah,
the
that's
blockade, they can
that's
move
not
oil.
lifting a sanction to me. That's they can move
That
oil and trade it
is
in dollars.
whoa, 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 whoa. That's not how the world works, Rob. That you know this, and so do I.
I'm
The world
talking
works
about the
the
stuff we've
moment
been sitting on before we blockaded their oil.
we are not giving them anything. But if you let them move boats, there is no way in hell they're moving them in yuan. They're not going to let him. I can tell you that right now. That's why he's saying that American companies are likely going to be involved because those ships are probably going to have to deal with DFC for insurance because Lloyd's doesn't want to touch this situation. That's what he's saying. The fact of the matter is they are getting no money from the United States or anyone else until that nuclear does. That is in the deal. I can guarantee that's the primary point in the deal. There's nothing else. They're not getting shit. But if they want to move those boats, guess what? You're going through DFC and you have to deal in the dollar. And that means you have to deal with an American company.
All right. Listen, Landy, we got to go. I'm going to leave it since it's my show on this. There is one thing I will not let you, David, or anybody else convince me otherwise. Trump has touted Iran's commitment not to make a nuclear weapon. That was Obama's whole fucking train. They promised never to make a nuclear weapon. The biggest joke of an agreement in 2015 was the one where it was like Munich in the 30s, peace for our time, peace for all time. Iran promising to not make a nuclear weapon is as meaningless today as it was in 2015. The fact that Trump is touting it as some big revelation, they are promising never. No, you're saying that, but they're promising to never have a nuclear weapon. They've been promising that for like 20 years. So one, I don't like that he says they're promising to do it. Two, I think our own intelligence community is so skeptical that Iran has any intention of following through on dismantling its nuclear program.
So is Trump and so is JD. That's what they just got on TV and said moments before we got on here. So
Well, no, they said
I
we'll have to
agree.
see if they do it.
No. When you talk about incentive-based stuff like JD just did, it's because we're fully, he literally said they never live up to their agreements. That's why we're going to keep the military there. Like that's the whole point. And this is not
Landy, we
something
need
that
a whole
Obama
other
did.
show on this. If they
Yes.
never live up to their agreements and the people who
We
made the
bomb them.
deal, no, but if the people who are making the deal think they are very unlikely to live up to their agreements, why are we making the deal?
It's good
If
for
I know you're
oil
going to rob
prices.
me, what? Just okay, Alex. That actually may be the one answer I'll accept. We simply are trying to push oil prices down right now.
Yeah, for Europe relief, for trade
No, for
negotiations, for the
domestic U.S.
G7.
politics too. They
No,
want gas
well,
prices.
we have a bunch of negotiations coming up and with Europe and then Russia. So I absolutely agree that it's based on energy. And I don't think that
Alright.
this holds at all.
Well, I don't either, for one of many reasons. Landy, always fun to have these conversations. You can
Yes,
join
sir.
me again next Monday if you want. I'll see you on Friday when,
Will
you
do.
know, we're going to team up on David and, you know,
Yep. Well, we're probably just
I
going to talk
appreciate
about the Knicks. Probably just end
Talk
up talking
about
about the Knicks
Friday.
all Friday, all week.
I was so it's a whole I'm saving it for Friday. I'm going to save my Bill Bradley story, who was part of the Knicks of 73 that, you know, the last time the Knicks won. Let's
Well,
save
then I
that
want to
for
hear it on
weekend.
Friday, Rob.
You hear it
I
on
want to hear it.
Friday. I got
Yes,
a
sir.
couple great Bill Bradley stories. All right. Appreciate you, Landy.
Appreciate you too. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks everybody for watching. Have a good night.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker?
It's good to see you. Listen,
If you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central bank digital currency.